Good evening all and welcome. As requested by Kirsten, tonight I have a collection of poop stories. And a very happy belated birthday to you, Kirsten. I'm sorry today's video didn't publish on time. It was simply very challenging to find these poop stories. But for now it's time to get comfortable and let the brownness take control. I don't know about you, but sometimes anxiety makes me struggle to poop. I was traveling abroad with my family, my husband and our 3 kids. It had been an extremely taxing day, the children all quite young, and making me stress out in various ways throughout the course of the day. So much so I hadn't been able to relieve myself since 2 days ago. To make things more challenging, my husband was inviting his 2 friends over to our tiny cramped apartment, which meant I wasn't going to have the night of quiet and relaxation that I desperately craved. Once his friends arrived and the greetings were out of the way, I spent my time putting the children to sleep. And once I was done, I made my way into the bathroom. My body was now ready to relieve itself. I sat on the throne and ejected a huge turd. I didn't realize how huge until I attempted to flush, and it wasn't moving. It was the kind of turd that reached the base of the bowl and was still poking out from the very top. I almost considered snapping a few pictures and sending it to ratemypoo.com, but decided against it. This was an absolute unit, a beast of a crap. Now, of course, that might be great in other situations, something foul to admire, but remember my husband had his friends in the other room, this being the only restroom in the whole apartment, and panic flooded me. I desperately tried texting him, but of course he was ignoring his phone, catching up with friends he hardly ever sees. I didn't know what to do, so I messaged a friend and confessed to her my heinous crime in the bathroom. She laughed, but I really needed someone to help me with this, just to try and get through it, to tell me what I needed to do. She asked if there was any implements around that I could use to try and cut the turd to make it easier to flush. All there were toothbrushes. I was at a loss for what to do, when I realized the bin had a plastic bag. After texting with my friend, I realized it was the only thing to do. I released the plastic bag from the bin, stuck my hand in, and began breaking apart this colossal beast of a turd. After a few successful squishes, I attempted the flush, and thankfully, all bits of the monster finally went down. Sweat was dripping from my forehead from the stress, and I sealed up the bag, put a new one in that thankfully was left at the bottom of the bin, and chucked it away. I then washed my hands as carefully as possible, but the anxiety was still there, because I had been in the toilet at this point half an hour, and it was evident what I must be doing in there. But I pulled myself together and walked through the door. Thankfully, the boys were still talking and probably hadn't noticed my absence very much, or probably weren't thinking about it. I had just got 2 in my head. But I'm so glad I managed to dispatch the monster, which may have made for very awkward conversation had I not braved the bag and destroyed it myself. I was on my usual 90-minute commute to work, snacking on something like life was normal, but about 20 minutes out my stomach decided it was done being a team player, and we're talking full DEFCON 1, sweating, shaking, and praying to every known deity. I was maybe 1 to 3 red lights away from work when I hit the point of no return. You know the one, where your body just quietly informs you that the time for choices is over. I pulled up to a red light surrounded by innocent commuters living their lives unaware of the gastrointestinal war raging inside me. That's when I saw it, a pedigree dog food bag, emptied and crumpled. A definitive gift from the trash gods. I whispered, "Screw it," like a man about to go into battle, grabbed a mountain of napkins from my glove box, ripped the bag open, and took off my seatbelt. I dropped my pants and assumed the hover position with my jacket modestly draped over my lap. Mid-hover, the light turns green, but I was committed. There was no going back. I delivered, right into a pedigree bag, like some unholy offering to the gods of shame. I pulled into the work parking lot like a legend, wiping up with surgical precision, and saw the dumpster waiting for me like it had been summoned. I yeeted the entire situation into the trash, walked into work like nothing had happened, and beelined to the bathroom for a final detailed pass and a proper hand wash. Then I clocked in like a fully functioning adult who absolutely did not just poop into a dog food bag on the side of the road. My first time going to Texas, I was very excited about a very popular place in Austin that had such a great reputation you had to make a line since early in the morning to make sure you get the chance to get some of the best barbecue ever. It was delicious, truly worth the hype and wait. And we got some to go. I also want to note this was during a road trip with my boyfriend. So after we're done eating, we took our leftovers and went to the hotel to pick up our stuff and be on our way south to a beach town. Once we arrived in said town, we passed by a parking place that had a lot of RVs and cars for people to park and stay in for the night in front of the beach, so we thought it might be a good idea to give it a try and ditch our hotel reservation. Bad idea number 1. We settled in the back of our car and watched videos while we snacked on the unrefrigerated leftovers from several hours ago. Bad idea number 2. Not even after an hour, I started getting hot and bothered, but was not very concerned about it because it was the middle of summer in Texas, so it was to be expected. But then the sweat started. My stomach started making noises while my legs also got weird cramps. I told my boyfriend I wasn't feeling well and that I really needed to use the bathroom. So we got back to the front seats and drove out of the parking location to find a bathroom, but everything was closed until we got to a gas station. But as soon as I got inside, the bathroom was out of service. So when I stepped out of the store to go back to my car, my butthole gave up on me, and I crapped myself so bad it fell down my shorts and left a big puddle of crap on the floor outside of the entrance of the store. I was so embarrassed, I got into the car on my knees and didn't touch the seat, and we drove off before anyone noticed. We kept looking around trying to find a bathroom so I could clean up, but the odds weren't in my favor. Nothing was open. So we went back to the beach and I had to clean myself half naked in the middle of the night on a random beach. The lowest point in my life. My boyfriend brought me some clean clothes and we got rid of my crappy shorts and underwear. Best we could do. Growing up in a sleepy little town meant boredom was a lifestyle choice. My best friend and I, him 15 and me 14, were seasoned wanderers, roaming on foot, searching for mischief like moths to a flame. On one particularly uneventful afternoon, we hit up the supermarket for the essentials, sodas, and a bag of discount carrots, fuel for the soul. We ended up walking the stretch of narrow road that connects two townships. Cars weren't allowed, just bikers, walkers, and the occasional rogue scooter. Right in the middle of that road was a small bridge over a shallow stream. One of those generic walkable bridges with black rubber decking and a single metal post at each end to stop vehicles. Not secluded, but not quiet enough on a weekday. We paused there for a bit, sipping sodas, nibbling on carrots, letting the grey drizzle soak in the moment. That's when my friend clutches at his stomach and goes, "Oh man, I gotta take a crap." I sighed, of course he did. His bowels were a ticking time bomb on any given day. I knew the drill. I started walking about 50 meters back the way we came to give him some space and find a bush or sneak under a bridge. A minute later I hear laughing. I turn around and see him standing proudly in the middle of the bridge, still on the bridge, no bush, no stealth, just my friend, grinning like a lunatic over what can only be described as a poop installation. I walk back and see it. 3 neat little turds arranged in a perfect triangle, like some dark druidic sigil. He was laughing like it was the funniest thing he'd ever done. "Dude, this is messed up," I said, not entirely wrong. To heighten the absurdity, I decided we needed a proper hazard signage. I pulled 3 carrots from our bag and stuck one upright in each turd. like tiny orange traffic cones. We stood there in the rain, wheezing with laughter, total idiots, but it was art. Poop art. We stayed a while longer, relishing the stupidity. Then off in the distance we heard the approach of a cyclist. It was that kid. He was the same age as us and we were already sworn enemies. He spotted us, gave my friend a scowl as he hit the bridge. He either tried to brake in anger or noticed the carrot turds and hesitated. But either way it was too late. The bridge was slick from rain and his tires slipped out from under him. He hit the ground hard, sliding like a meat missile across the black rubber, and in a symphony of fate, slid right through the triangle of turds, scattering the carrots like cones and bowling pins and smearing himself in my friend's excrement from thigh to chest. He slammed his knees into the metal post at the far end of the bridge and came to a stop in a heap of pain, pride, and poo. Then he stood up, face red with anger and embarrassment. "Sup?" he barked like nothing happened. My friend squinted at him calmly and said, "Dude, you're covered in crap." The guy looked down. A slow-motion realization crept across his face. He turned ghostly pale. I think he fully registered that this wasn't dog crap, that it was fresh, teenage human chaos. He stammered something like, "Screw you, I'll see you again," grabbed his bike and fled, covered in shame and digestive justice. As far as I know, they never fought again, and I like to think that somewhere deep in his mind it clicked. You don't mess with the kind of guy who craps in triangles and marks it with carrots. My girlfriend and I were in beautiful Porto, staying at a charming little riverside hotel with a scenic tram access, beach bars, and unbeknownst to us, an evil bathroom key conspiracy. Upon check-in, the hotel gave us 2 key cards, one of which didn't work. We got a third one and figured we'd sort it out later. I tossed the dart into the pocket of my swimming suit shorts, which we stuffed into the day bag, foreshadowing my friend's foreshadowing. The plan was simple: catch some sun, drink some cider, and enjoy some vacation bliss. And it was going well. Canned sardines, smoothies, wine, and a nap in the sun like 2 carefree lizards. I even managed a quick sunburn as a souvenir. Then cider, 2 pints, and that was the moment things started turning. The first sign was subtle, a gentle gurgling in my gut, a warning tremor. I figured I had time. We left the beach, walked past a churro place, which I think now was the last safe haven, and I decided I'd rather poop in the comfort of the hotel, because, dignity. The cramps came fast and hard. On the tram platform it became clear I had entered the final phase of gastrointestinal countdown. I was sweating, breathing shallow, clenching every muscle I had like I was trying to hold in from collapsing. When the tram finally arrived, we got on. It was the longest 10 minutes of my life. My girlfriend thought I was mad at her because of the silence and death stare I was giving the floor. I texted her the truth. I'm fighting for my life right now. We got off at our stop, and she told me there was a bathroom in the hotel lobby. What a miracle. I sprinted inside. The cubicles looked occupied. I tried them all. Red lights. All of Porto apparently uses red toilet indicators. It was a lie. I ran back out to the elevator. My girlfriend was already inside waiting. We got to our floor. She told me to use the room while she went up to the rooftop bar. I nodded, fumbling for the keycard I thought was the working one, and I pulled it from the depths of my shorts. Red light. Nothing. No entry. I screamed her name like I was in a war film, but she was gone and the elevator doors had closed. I was doomed. But then I remembered the bag. Hope. The third card, the working one, was in there. I dropped to my knees in the hallway, flinging clothes like a madman until, praise be, I found it. The doors opened. My shorts were already halfway down. I sprinted back towards the bathroom like I was reversing a delivery truck. And what happened next was pure horror. My body could no longer wait. It launched. It hit the floor, the toilet, the glass shower door, my legs, my shoes. It was everywhere. A Jackson Pollock of trauma. I even sat in it twice. The smell was farm adjacent. I stripped, showered, and immediately had to go again. I hadn't even wiped the first round of chaos off the seat. It was a war zone. Toilet paper was sacrificed. A sock was used to scrub out grout. And it took 35 minutes of scrubbing, crying, and rethinking my life choices. Eventually I emerged, fresh, humble, and wearing clean trainers and a haunted expression. I joined my girlfriend at the rooftop bar, and didn't speak of it until now. The year was 2007. I had just finished my first year of uni before heading home. My dad and I made a stop at the local Chipotle to grab a burrito bowl, which in hindsight might have been deeply prophetic considering what would happen a few weeks later. So we're waiting in line, right, and this guy I had just partied with during the year, who also happened to be the president of the Jewish fraternity on campus, starts chatting us up. He says he's leading this trip to Israel in a few weeks with a bunch of other college kids. Anyway, I was a 19-year-old with zero interest in international travel. I just wanted to stay home, smoke weed, and chill with my friends all summer. But somehow, it started to sound interesting, this journey. I got convinced, maybe bribed, I don't know, but I agreed to go. And off I went to the motherland. Fast forward, we're about a week into the trip. I've made friends. I'm actually having a great time aside from the light sprinkling of propaganda. The itinerary on this one particular day, kayaking on the Jordan River, one of the holiest bodies of water in history. Jesus himself was baptized there. Did I care? Not even a little. I just wanted to catch some rays and vibe with my new Jewish homies. So we're on the bus heading to the river, and we stop at this little shop. And I wander into the refrigerated section and I see it. Chocolate milk. The only thing hotter than Israeli women carrying assault rifles is the Israeli weather, and nothing sounded better than a nice, ice-cold bag of chocolate milk. Yes, bag, don't question it. So I chug it. It's delicious. Life is good. And off we go. The kayaking, amazing. Sun out, water flowing. It's the perfect mix of chill and adventure. The setup was simple. Get dropped off at the top of the river, float downstream for a few hours and get picked up at the end. About an hour in, I start to feel it. The grumble. Not a big deal. I've been living off shawarma and pitta after all. My stomach was just adjusting. But 2 hours go by, and those grumbles had turned into gut-wrenching death cramps. We finally make it to the end of the route. We're standing on the riverbank waiting for a truck to collect us. The chocolate milk, my once sweet companion, has become an internal hostage crisis, and I realize I'm not going to make it. I start scanning for a bathroom, a porta potty, a hole in the earth. Nothing. So I do the only thing I can. I bolt for the bushes, but halfway there I realize I'm not going to make them either. What do I do? Just crap myself in front of 30 strangers? No, that won't do. So I pivot. I sprint to the river. I rip off my bathing suit and unleash an explosion that could redefine the geopolitical landscape of the region. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the river's current grabs me and I lose my footing. I'm now being carried down the holy Jordan River, naked and surrounded in my own filth. This is not what Jesus had in mind. Somehow I managed to swim to the riverbank and crawl back up to my group, who have watched everything unfold in real time. They are laughing. I am laughing. There are tears of laughter in my eyes and shame in my soul. I waited there on the riverbank, still dripping, still dying inside, and I knew I would never return to this now most unholy of rivers. 10 out of 10. Would poo in the Jordan again? We were staying at a nice hotel for a corporate meeting. Clean lobby, decent breakfast buffet, everything seemed on point. A quiet, uneventful morning, until a scream ripped through the dining area. Not just any scream. It was the kind that silences a room. Everyone froze. Someone asked if someone was being murdered. Turns out it wasn't, but something far worse. One of our co-workers, called Lisa, had jumped into the shower early that morning. She didn't bother to grab a towel beforehand because, hey, they were neatly folded up. in the built-in rack inside the shower, fresh, white and fluffy. She lathered up her hair, her face, the full routine, and when it came time to dry off, she grabbed blind the towel, closed her eyes and went to work. A few vigorous wipes up and down and... wait. This wasn't the soft, dry, cottony warmth of a clean hotel towel. It was sticky and slimy. She opened her eyes and came face to face with a towel streaked full of human waste. Not a stain, not a smudge, a full-blown load. Right there in the towel she had just used to scrub her face. She screamed, the kind of scream that makes your soul leave your body. And then the smell hit, that pungent, unmistakable scent of someone else's digestive sins. Her screams carried down the 3 floors into breakfast, where the rest of us were quietly enjoying scrambled eggs and hotel-grade coffee. Management was naturally horrified. They couldn't figure out how it happened. But one theory, a very disgruntled maid with a vendetta. Another more plausible theory, the previous guest decided to leave a parting gift and folded it back up just so. Needless to say, Lisa left the hotel immediately, and presumably still hasn't forgiven the universe. Moral of the story, always check your towel. This all went down way back when I was in secondary school, 4th period to be exact. I was just doing my usual thing when suddenly my stomach dropped a warning. A deep guttural, you better make a plan, kinda warning. But being the brave and slightly foolish soul I was, I decided to power through. Why? Because school bathrooms are biohazard zones, and I wasn't about to catch tetanus trying to poop in peace, so I held it. Through 5th period, 6th, 7th, each hour was a new level of pain. Waves of gut-wrenching agony. By 8th period science class, I was a broken man. I couldn't think, I couldn't talk, I couldn't function. My face was crimson. People kept asking me if I was okay or if I was about to pass out. I just sat there completely unresponsive, locked in a silent battle with my own colon. Then came the truth of the moment. My body sounded the alarm. I clamped down every fiber of my being, barely holding back the apocalypse, and somehow I made it to the end of class without a full-blown disaster. I booked it onto the bus, sat there in dead silence like I was commuting home from war, and finally got to my stop. I ran like hell. Full sprinted to the front door, reached for my key, nope, forgot it. The despair was immediate. I considered just accepting my fate right then on the porch. But then hope. I remember the backyard. I vaulted over the fence like an Olympic athlete, tore through the grass, praying the back door was unlocked. It wasn't. And that's when I saw a bucket. A dusty, neglected Home Depot bucket sitting near the end of the shed. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't ideal, but at that moment it was my throne. No time to think. No time for shame. I dropped my pants, squatted like a feral creature, and unleashed the fury. In the backyard, into a bucket. When I was done, I wiped with a rag I found hanging on a rake. Desperate times, my friends, and I sat there for a moment breathing, recovering, reflecting on life and how my ancestors had probably done something similar centuries ago. I survived with just a slight smear in my underwear and my dignity dangling by a thread. There's a single bathroom in our office, tucked in the corner right next to this guy's desk. He's usually the last to leave, often burning the midnight oil with headphones in, typing away like he's on a mission. This night, I felt the unmistakable gurgle, the kind that bubbles from your depths. I popped my head out of my office and looked him dead in the eye. "Hey man, you might want to head out," I said. He laughed and said, "I'm good," completely unaware of the devastation about to unfold. 5 minutes later, the situation was no longer negotiable. I made my move. I slammed the door behind me and all hell broke loose. It was a machine gun poop, a relentless, gut-clenching symphony of destruction, each blast echoing off the walls like a battlefield report. Just when I thought I was done, reload, another round and another, like my intestines had queued up an encore performance for every food sin I'd ever committed. 10 minutes in, I was finally confident that the internal uprising had been subdued. I wiped down what was left of my dignity, washed up, and stepped out into the fluorescent glow of the office. There he was, still at his desk, laughing. "Dude," he wheezed. "I swear to God your ass made every fart sound known to man. You hit the whole symphonic scale. There were notes in there." I shrugged. "I did warn you." He nodded and, still chuckling, said, "Yeah, you did." The bathroom was never quite the same after that, and neither were we. Back in high school, I ran sound for the theatre shows on weekends. On the final night of production, I was running on fumes. So, like an absolute genius, I stopped at a gas station and grabbed a Monster and 2 5-hour energy shots. I didn't even drink coffee back then, but apparently I decided to mainline jet fuel that night. I chugged it all like some kind of overconfident raccoon and went on to run the show. Everything was fine, until it wasn't. Right as the show was wrapping up, my body sent out a very clear distress signal, a full system alert. I felt nauseous, sweaty, and the dizziness hit like a truck. My vision blurred, my ears were ringing, and I knew something unspeakable was coming. I bailed out of the booth and started speed-walking down the hall like I was on a mission from God. I dropped my stuff mid-stride, ripped my jacket off like it was on fire, and stumbled to the nearest bathroom, basically blind and running on instinct. I made it into the stall just in time for my entire digestive system to perform an exorcism. What happened next cannot be described, it can only be survived. It was like my soul left through my butt. And the wildest part, as soon as it was over, my vision came back. Like my body said, "You've suffered enough." The toilet didn't flush, no idea why, maybe it was scared. That unholy mess sat there for weeks, a dark monument to my poor choices. I haven't touched an energy drink since, and that was 15 years ago, and the memory still haunts me. I had just stepped outside the shower, fresh, clean, and wrapped in nothing but a towel, like some kind of post-bathroom Adonis. I felt what I thought was just a harmless little fart brewing, so what do? I did what any overconfident fool would do. I gave it room to breathe. I squatted slightly, just enough to assist with what I assumed would be a cheek flapper and a pop. A rogue nugget launched itself onto the carpet like a tiny brown paratrooper. Panic. Pure, "oh no, I just ruined my cleaned human status" panic. I grabbed a tissue and tried to scoop it up, but the traitor was too soft. I ended up smearing the carpet like it was a painting from hell. The smell, criminal, like something had died and returned to life and died again. Just as I was desperately scrubbing and cursing my bowels, my roommate bursts in and yells, "What the actual hell?" And then, like the universe was testing my last shred of dignity, he adds on, "Dude, the director is 2 doors down doing inspections." Cue internal screaming. Seconds later, the door swings open and in walks the director himself. Military posture, crisp zoot, zero tolerance for turd carpets. He takes one sniff in the room and goes, "What the hell's that smell?" I lock eyes with him, heart pounding, towel barely hanging on for dear life, and all I could say was, "Sorry, sir. I had Torchy's tacos last night and it gave me gas." He stared at me in silence. I stared back, a broken man in a towel. Then he slowly closed the door and walked away. But he never looked at me the same way again. I was about 4 years old, living my best life, taking my bath with my older sister who was 6. When the bath finished, we were getting out. My sister, clearly already drunk with big sibling power, decides she doesn't want to get the floor wet, like she's royalty. And her grand solution? I was to become her human step stool. Her words, not mine. She tells me to get down on all fours so she can stand on my back while brushing her hair like a diva fresh out of a Vogue shoot. For some reason, my tiny toddler brain was like, yes, this makes perfect sense. I am the floor now. So I positioned myself like a faithful bath servant, still damp and shivering, right next to the tub. She steps on my back, and in that exact moment, physics, betrayal, and gravity all join forces against me. The floor was already wet from our soggy bath exit, so as soon as she put her full 6-year-old weight on me, my arms and legs shot out like a cartoon character slipping on a banana peel. And here comes the grand finale. As my stomach slapped the cold linoleum with the force of a tiny cannonball, the impact literally launched poop from my body. No warning, no build-up, just surprise poop, fired like a tragic bodily confetti cannon. We both froze. She was still standing there, brush in hand, staring at me like I had just performed dark magic. I was equally horrified and a little bit amazed. It was like, did I just poop from falling? Yes, I did. We never spoke of it again, but it lives in the halls of childhood trauma and sibling warfare. I was playing in a chess tournament at some random school I'd never been to before. I must have been around 6 years old, super shy, the kind of kid who'd rather suffer in silence than ask a stranger for help. Anyway, a few moves into the match I get this horrible stomach cramp. I didn't want to raise my hand and ask where the bathroom was because I didn't know any of the adults and didn't want to draw attention to myself. So I did what any panicked 6-year-old might do. I tried to hold it. Plot twist, I couldn't. And I don't mean a little accident. I mean a full-on catastrophic pants-running disaster right there in my tiny plastic chair. I sat there absolutely still, hoping if I didn't move no one would notice. Just staring at the board, pretending to be deep in thought while my muscles inside me betrayed me in the worst possible way. Then the smell hit. My opponent, some poor kid who had no idea what horrors awaited him that day, suddenly wrinkled his nose and looked at me like, "What the hell is that?" And I, ever the actor, wrinkled my nose too, gave him a sympathetic look like, "Yeah man, someone must have let one rip, huh? Crazy." But he wasn't buying it. He leaned back, looked under the table, and that's when I saw the expression on his face change from confusion to pure unfiltered horror, like he had witnessed a crime scene. He immediately flagged down a teacher and whispered something to him while pointing at me. Next thing I know, I'm being gently escorted out of the room, trying not to cry. My dignity leaking away one squishy step at a time. They called my dad to collect me early. And just to top it all off, I lost the match. A few years ago, I caught influenza A the night before an early morning flight. Like full body aches, fever, chills, the whole "am I dying or just being dramatic" experience. I told my mum I was nauseous and didn't want to puke on the plane, so she gave me a Dramamine. Great for nausea, sure, but no one thought about the other end. No Pepto, no anything. I managed to get on the flight feeling like microwaved garbage. I basically passed out on my seat, hoping to just sleep through it and not become that passenger. Fast forward to landing and I'm barely holding it together. Then the plane hits the runway and my stomach does this horrifying lurch, like it remembered its evil purpose. I instantly go into red alert mode, but the seatbelt sign dings off and people start standing up, grabbing their bags, and I'm thinking, okay, just hold it, you're almost there. Just grab your bag and make a run for it. So I stand, stretch up the overhead bin, and my body quits. I don't mean a little fart. I mean full-on, no warning, catastrophic pants betrayal. I crapped myself while reaching for my bag, mid-stretch, like my body said, "You know what? We're done pretending." I froze, standing there in silent horror, while the guy behind me pretended not to notice. I didn't even move until the row cleared out. At that point, I did the world's most awkward waddle down the aisle and straight to the bathroom in the terminal. I threw my underwear in an airport trash, like a war criminal hiding evidence. Last year, I was in a very well-known city in Mexico, famous for its gastronomic scene, as a whole-week event where food, beer and wine were plentiful. I've always had good digestion and rarely get stomach issues, but the day I was leaving, the main brunch dish was mole enchiladas and a lot of beer. The bus was leaving in the afternoon, and after walking a long way through the terminal to find the departure gate, I realized the walk and the food had sped up my digestion. I hurried to the bus, because I knew it had separate and decent restrooms, so before getting to my seat, I went straight to the toilet. This bus was double-decker, and located on the lower level very close to the downstairs passenger seats, which were quite comfortable and arranged like a train, with a small table between each row, was the bathroom. I went there because I really had to, and without getting too graphic, it was a bit liquid, but not completely. Feeling relieved, I pressed the flush button, but these buses have, for some reason, but instead of flushing like a hatch, it clogged. I waited a bit and pressed the button again, just to be sure it was useless. It was weird because these bathrooms usually open like a hatch that empties into a tank under the bus, but it didn't happen this time. Since the bus hadn't left yet, I thought that perhaps that was the reason, and so that no one would realize what had happened in there, I quickly washed my hands and went up to the seat as if nothing had occurred. Later on, thinking that someone might want to use the bathroom, I went back down to see this time if it would work. I pressed the flush button and of course things got worse. Instead of flushing, it flooded even more, to the point of overflowing, now making the water make waves due to the bus's movement. All the mess began to spill on the floor, which fortunately had some kind of containment so it wouldn't leak into the rest of the bus. Still, I was quite concerned because someone was going to get into a horrible surprise, especially the cleaning staff. I felt bad for them. I closed the door as fast as I could so I wouldn't get any dirt on the overflow and went back to my seat. Honestly, I felt really ashamed because those bathrooms are usually really clean, and I felt bad for the person who had to deal with it. I went fishing with my dad one winter. We were way out there in the middle of nowhere, and I was wearing one of those full-body snowsuits, basically like a big, warm onesie for the cold. Super cozy, super bulky. After a while, I felt the need to poop. No bathroom around, of course, so I went into the woods, took off the snowsuit and did my business, and put the suit back on. That's when I realized I had somehow managed to poop inside the suit. I must have misjudged something or not aimed right, because now there was poop in the suit and I was wearing it. We had driven hours to get there, so my dad wasn't about to pack everything up. He just told me to change into the extra clothes we had, which were definitely not as warm, and we kept fishing. When we finally got home, I went straight into a hot bath and tried to forget about the shame. I was 12 and on this family vacation to Washington, D.C. We were doing all the touristy stuff, museums, monuments, walking like 1,000,000 miles a day, and for some mystical reason at some point, my stomach decided to go full nuke. I had these nuclear swampy farts brewing within me. Not the quiet kind. These were disrespectful. We're about to go on the metro, and there's this long escalator that goes down into the station, like really long, like you're descending into the underworld. I'm standing above my two brothers on the escalator, and I just let one sneak out, silent, deadly, and majestic. My brothers didn't even notice at first until they looked up, and saw the people behind me gagging and covering their nose, like I just opened a portal to a landfill. I felt kind of proud, not gonna lie, so naturally my brother dared me to drop another one once we got inside the metro car. You know, like true supportive siblings. But of course my butt decided to go on strike. I couldn't fart on command. I was like a failed magician with no tricks. Fast forward, we get off the train and start walking up the stairs to leave the station. And my body's like, boom, now is the time. I felt the pressure, the power. So I turned to my brother, grinned like a maniac and said something super cool like, "Check this out." Lifted my leg like a dog marking its territory and let it rip. Plot twist, it wasn't just a fart, it was a betrayal. It was a full-on shard, like a wet declaration of war from my intestines. My face apparently did the whole error 404, confidence not found thing, and my brother died of laughter. I was just standing there, considering my life choices. My dad, to his credit, didn't even laugh. He took me into this random restaurant where I had to waddle to the bathroom, ditch my boxers like a war casualty, and clean myself up like some kind of poop ninja. From that moment on, I was going commando in the middle of July heat, walking around with the kind of chafing that could probably start a fire. Moral of the story? Never trust a fart when you're 12 and trying to impress your siblings. It's all fun and games until your underwear ends up in a restaurant trash can. Back in college, my friend and his new girlfriend came to visit me and my roommate at our apartment. She was a vegetarian, and by default, so was he while they were together. During their stay, she kept going on about the vegetarianism benefits, how humans aren't meant to eat meat, how it's better for digestion, all the stuff. It was constant. So partially to be polite and partially just to get her to stop, I told them I'd give it a try for a day. They were already cooking their own meals, so I figured I'd just eat whatever they were eating and see how it went. The next morning they left and things went back to normal. My roommate and I were at our desks in the living room, both on computers, and he had his headphones on. I felt a solid fart coming, and since there were no guests around anymore, I leaned to the side and let it out. Except it wasn't a fart. It was a full-on, beam-powered, soft-serve disaster. My eyes went wide. I looked over at my roommate to see if he noticed anything, but he was still focused on his screen. I grabbed the arms of my chair and slowly rolled myself to the bathroom. Once inside, I pulled down my pants to check the damage. And yeah, it was bad, real bad. I started swearing, which finally got my roommate's attention. "You good?" he called out. "I just crapped myself." "What?" I'm 22 years old and I just crapped myself. Later that day, I left my friend a voicemail explaining the whole thing. He ended up admitting that maybe vegetarianism isn't for everyone. Right by a glassy pine-ringed lake. It was supposed to be peaceful. I was hunched over the camp stove cooking dinner as dusk crept in, when the sky cracked open with the first growl of a massive storm. Within seconds, the wind picked up and the air turned electric. We grabbed our plates, leashed our dog, and bolted for the tent. The cooking area only had a mesh sliding, and the storm was barreling fast. I didn't even bother packing up the food or stove. The storm didn't just pass, it settled. Sheets of rain hammered the tent all night, and we drifted off to sleep, with the dogs curled up beside us, twitching at every gust. When morning came, the sky was calm, the lake misty. I unzipped the tent, stiff-legged and groggy, and trudged over to the picnic shelter expecting a disaster zone. But to my shock, the food was untouched. Stove still there, coolers unraided, no tracks, no damage, nothing except one thing. Right next to the stove, coiled like some cursed forest offering, was the biggest pile of crap I have ever seen in my life. And I mean massive. One of the logs was longer than my forearm and thick like a wrestler's bicep. The entire heap looked like a python had crawled out of the woods, died and started decomposing. It reeked like something that had fed on roadkill and shame. The dogs wouldn't go near it. They actually whimpered and retreated to the tent. I didn't take time to investigate. Whatever creature had left this behind was huge and probably still nearby. We packed in record time, silent, adrenaline humming under our skin. I kept checking the trees, half expecting some forest cryptid to be watching us. I still have no idea what would leave behind something so grotesque. Bear, moose, Sasquatch with IBS. All I know is that I'll never camp in that lake again. I clocked in at 11:30 p.m. for what I thought would be a quiet night shift. Maybe restock some coffee, scroll through emails, answer the odd guest request. You know, the usual. Instead, I walked into chaos. Apparently a dog had been barking non-stop in one of the rooms. Guests on the same floor were calling down furious. Some even moved rooms because they couldn't take the noise anymore. The team had tried to find the guest responsible but came up empty. I sent our shuttle driver to scope it out, and as soon as he got out of the elevator he could hear the dog. That floor had turned into a canine concert hall. An hour later I decided to check it out myself. Sure enough, the room's empty, well except for the dog, aka his travel bag, aka the dog's smuggle bag, an untouched food bowl, and a catastrophic amount of feces, like apocalyptic levels. It was everywhere, in the shower, in the bathroom, by the door, streaked into the carpet like someone had tried to Jackson Pollock the place in excrement. It was unbelievable. We decided right then once the guests showed up they were getting the boot. But they didn't. I tried charging the card for the disaster cleanup fee and surprise declined. I just wanted them to walk by before my shift ended because frankly my day crew is soft. sweet folks, but they don't have the backbone to tell someone they've been evicted like their Yorkie turned the room into a biohazard. And sadly, I left for the night. But apparently she came back after I left. She'd gone to an all-night party, and when confronted, she had the audacity to lie and say she told us about the dog. Spoiler, she did not. She pitched a fit, cried, denied, and got kicked. Godspeed to housekeeping. And there you have it, 20 filthy poop stories. I hope you laughed a bit. I certainly did while trying to record these. I'd like to thank, as always, my members and patrons. And if you would like to have your birthday topic, feel free to join Patreon and find out more info what that entails. But until next time, stay awesome and have a good night.